Buying a house in the UK can be strange and confusing and might not make much sense, and you wouldn't be right there. The UK process is absolutely bonkers. In this video, I'm going to show you the process of buying a house in the UK and all of the different steps, and why there are some risks in certain areas and why things can and could go wrong. It's really useful to know at every single point what's happening between putting an offer on a house and then going all the way through to completion, because if you know and understand what's going on, you can help your broker, your solicitor, your lender, whoever it is that's having issues within the process. You can aid them and give them a little bit of support that they need as well from you. And there are certain things that you can also do to help speed up the process. And by knowing all of this, you can feel that little bit more confident when going in and buying your very first or other multiple properties. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Matt. I work for a bank by day. I invest in property on the side. And on this channel, we explore all things money, finance, and property investing to help people lead a more financially savvy life. So how long does the house buying process take? Well, how long is a piece of string? It's a very difficult process in the UK, and if you're buying at auction, then it can take as little as up to 4 weeks because all of the documentation is pre-prepared when you bid and then win an auction property. However, the norm is around 6 to 8 months. It can be a little bit quicker. You might be able to do it in 3 to 4 months. It depends on multiple factors, and every single house purchase is completely different, and that's what makes it so special. You could be looking at a property where you have a multiple long chain of people, which means that the sellers need to move, you need to move, your buyers need to move for your property, and it creates this entire chain of people who then need to move to make it all happen. So that in itself can take many months alone, where you're just sat waiting and nothing's actually happening. There are other different things to consider. Each individual property purchase is very unique. You might find that there are particular issues on the surveys that come up that then you have to deal with individually with your solicitor. So it really is the Wild West out there, and anything could happen. So don't set any particular expectations on when you would like to move in until you have signed the contract and exchanged, and that's when you can start thinking about the completion date and actually mentally moving into the property. So firstly, finding your home is the very start of the process. Now, a lot of people start on websites like Rightmove or Zoopla, and these are incredible search engines where you can view lots of different properties for sale on the market. I would say in 2021 that most estate agents are using Rightmove and Zoopla to list their houses for sale, because that is where a lot of people start their journey now when they're looking for a house. It allows you to quickly and easily set a budget and filter down to the exact type of property that you want within a geographical area. Now, all you need to do is go through, have a look at some of the properties. There should be loads of photos, hopefully some videos as well. And then once you've found a few properties that you really like, the best thing to do is ring up the estate agent. The contact details are always there on the page. Give them a call and book in a viewing straight away. You don't need to be chatting away for a very long time on the phone to the estate agent. Just tell them you're interested in viewing the property and give them the address, and they'll book you in, no questions asked. Judging a house purely by its cover on Rightmove is quite a tricky thing to do. I've tried to do this in the past when I'm looking at different property deals. The problem is that what you see on the photos is often using a wide-angle lens like this one here that makes a room in a space feel a lot bigger than what it actually is. So until you actually get to the property, it's difficult to really understand and appreciate the size of the rooms themselves and what it's like in person. You might also notice that the estate agents have cheekily left off some very important photos where there might be damage to the property or mold, or there are some hidden issues that aren't quite visible from the photos themselves. I actually have a video here that you can click on in the corner, which is my top tips on viewing a property, what to look for, and also if you're looking for a refurb project or a do-it-upper type property, then how to use a 7, 14, 21 or £30,000 model to then roughly calculate how much a property might need to bring it up to standard. Okay, so you've viewed a load of properties, and now is the time to start making offers on those properties. The best thing to do is head on to Rightmove or Zoopla and look at sold comparables in the area and get a feel for what other houses have actually sold for. What I would say is do not look at current for sale prices, because for sale and sold are two separate figures and often things do fluctuate. It's as simple as dropping the estate agent a phone call and just saying to them that you'd like to make an offer on the property. But I would recommend that you should always follow up in writing or just send an email to begin with, so that you've got it in writing and you've got proof that you made an offer of that amount. It also means that the estate agent can come back and confirm to you that they've also given the offer to the person selling the house. Sometimes, depending on the property, how popular it is, and the estate agent themselves, they may ask for an agreement in principle, which means that you can show them that you are able to get lending on that particular house. And the reason why they ask this is that if it's a popular house, what they don't want is someone bidding, winning, and then dropping out of the process. They want to make sure whoever makes an offer is not going to drop out halfway through the process. And this is what they call a substantiated offer if you can prove that you have the lending in place and that you are a serious buyer. So that will go a long way. Even if they don't ask for it, it's a really good tip to give them the agreement in principle, because it shows that you're serious and you're not going to drop out and disappoint them and let them down, because that's going to look bad for them to the person who's selling the house. So once you made all the offers, hopefully one of those offers is then accepted. Now what happens here is that the property is usually taken off the market. Make sure that if you put an offer in, that it is taken off, especially if the seller has listed it with multiple estate agents. Make sure that's part of your condition of the offer. Take it off the market, no one else can bid, because the last thing that you want is somebody then giving a higher offer at the last minute and then completely destroying your sale and obviously the money you've spent on the solicitor in the beginning of the conveyancing process. Now, that leads me on to my next point. What you need to then do is instruct a solicitor. Now, this is quite an easy part to do. If you have a solicitor already ready to go, then just give them the details and then your estate agent will begin speaking to the solicitor, and you can always give them a heads up as well. A solicitor is essentially there to protect you while purchasing a property. Houses are these big, expensive things that come with a lot of risk, there are a lot of problems, and of course there is also a lot of paperwork with each house as well. What they'll be doing is raising lots of questions with the seller's solicitor. They'll be checking all the paperwork, starting all the surveys, and going through that process of conveyancing. That's what conveyancing means. As you then get towards the end of the process and all of the documentation and the searches are fine and solved, and all of the solicitor's work is done, the last thing they do then is start to collect your deposit. They'll speak to your lender and collect the money and draw down the funds from the mortgage, and then they'll start moving all that cash for the property to the seller's solicitor, and that's how you finally complete. But before we go that far, once you've instructed your solicitor and they've started the conveyancing on the property, the next best thing to do is take your agreement in principle from your lender and then either go back to the banks or go back to your mortgage broker and start getting a mortgage offer fixed and ready to go. Now, this is the part where you start to give all of the paperwork, things like past pay slips, bank statements, go through all the anti-money laundering checks and show where the proof of your deposit has come from. A lot of people do use just the retail high street banks and what mortgages they have available, but I do highly recommend speaking to a broker, because even though they charge a roughly £600 fee for the cost of their services, they really are someone who's going to advocate and sell you to the lenders in a way that's going to make it really attractive. And this is where brokers have access to a lot of off-market mortgage deals that you won't necessarily find on the high street, which means better mortgage rates. And a better mortgage rate over the course of 20-30 years is going to save you a lot more money than their initial fee. They really are going to be your champion to the lenders to make sure that the lender is confident in who you are. So they really are the middleman to do all of the paperwork and all of the heavy lifting if that's not something that you want to do yourself. And just before you get the formal mortgage offer in place, what the lender will usually ask is then to undertake a survey on the property. Now, there are different levels of surveys. You can start with a very basic one, which is usually around £300, or you can go for a more in-depth survey, which can be up to £1,000, and that's when you start touching the realms of structural engineers and structural surveys, where it's an older property, and especially if you know it's damaged, it's better to get a structural survey, because that gives the lender more confidence that what you're purchasing isn't as risky as what it seems, and you've already factored in all those costs as part of the purchase. The survey will essentially put a true value on the property that isn't done by the estate agent and between the sellers. And sometimes they can sell a property at way above what it's actually worth, and when the lender comes along, they say it's actually worth £20,000 less. They will devalue the property, and that is officially what the property is worth and what they are prepared to lend against. This can actually go in your favour, however, be warned, it can sometimes destroy chains and sale processes because the seller doesn't want to sell the property below what they thought they were going to get for it rather than what it should be worth. And while all of the mortgage documentation is being put together and you're getting ready to draw it down, your solicitor will be working hard behind the scenes to look at things like surveys, land registry, title deeds, raising questions to the seller's solicitor and going through all of that process to begin putting the final contract together to sell the property and put it officially into your name. We then enter the first major milestone of the property sale process, which is known as exchanging. Now, this is why the UK is a little bit backwards, because you put an offer on a house and you start to spend a lot of money on conveyancing, and then when you go through all of those surveys and searches, that's where things can start to go wrong. You can find issues, might find that properties in the area have loads of claims of subsidence, which is where they start to sink into the ground, which is bad for insurance, and that's where it can start to destroy the process because you find all of this out after spending your initial money. In Scotland, it's a lot better because all these searches are done up front, so when you buy a property, you know there are going to be no major issues later down the line that could then jeopardise the process. But all being well, and for the majority of cases, it does go pretty smooth. When you get to the exchange part of the process, this is where you sign the contract to then purchased the house. And it's from this point, once you have officially exchanged, that the house is technically and legally yours. By exchanging contracts, it's now a legally binding contract to sell that house from the seller to you. And usually it also becomes your responsibility to start then getting things like buildings insurance on the property straight away from the moment that you're exchanged, so the property is protected. Once you've exchanged, it's usually very, very quick from here. This is when your solicitor will ask you to send over the deposit money to their client account. So they'll take the deposit money from you, and then they'll also start to draw down the funds from the lender. So they'll take your deposit, they'll take the mortgage funds, put the two together, and that will make the official sale price of the property. Once everything's ready to go, they'll do some very last searches to make sure that the seller hasn't gone bankrupt and that the house is still theirs between the point of exchange and completion. And then they'll arrange what is known as the completion day. Now, this is a very set date, and this is when, firstly, the money is sent from your solicitor to the seller's solicitor. And then once that happens, the whole process is completely done by that point, and then that's when the keys can be officially released to you, usually by the estate agent, if not from the vendor themselves who is selling. After you've got the keys and gone through what could be a very stressful process or a very easy process, the very last thing to do is then just settle up some of the final costs with your solicitor. You might find that then your solicitor adds up all of the total cost and there's an extra fee here and there that you might have to pay. You also then have to settle things like stamp duty, land tax after the purchase, and this is where your solicitor will sort everything out and give you a final confirmation of charges to settle that particular account, and then finish all of the work with the solicitor, and then you'll be completely done with it. Hopefully I've simplified that in a way that's understandable. The joy of having a broker, a solicitor, and all these professionals around you is that they can wrap their arms around you and protect you during what is quite a complex process. And that's what you're paying for. If you're paying a mortgage broker their fee, if you're paying a solicitor £1,500 to £2,000, it's those professionals who will protect you and look after you through the process, and they should make it as easy as possible for you. I hope you found this video useful. I've got loads of other great ones on the channel, like this one on the top here, which is my top tips on viewing a property, what I'd look for, and how to cost up a refurb. Or you can check out this one on the bottom, which is my top 2021 buy-to-let hotspots in the UK. So feel free to choose one of these, and I'll see you on the other side.